You're tuned into DecayMag podcast, online source for horror, thriller and sci-fi entertainment news.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Ken Artuz, founder of DecayMag, and I'm your host this evening. Joining me as co-host is
Stacy Cox, staff correspondent for DecayMag.com. Be sure to stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/DecayMag. Your donations will help us bring future episodes. As a patron, you'll receive bonus content as well as free and discounted on upcoming DecayMag merchandise.
And you're listening to Season 9, Episode 1. Our last episode was our 100th episode. That was a great milestone.
Yes, and I'm still bummed that I missed it. Sorry.
That is a-okay. Things happen with the schedule, especially with the 9 to 5. That's understandable.
Yeah, next time. 200, here I come.
Yeah, for the 200th episode, exactly. And in this episode, we're going to be presenting our coverage of Come Said the Night. We have an exclusive interview with actress Nicole Moorea Sherman and also actor Lew Temple. Many would recognize the name Lew Temple. He starred in season 3 of The Walking Dead. He played a pivotal role in that TV series. But we're going to be discussing their upcoming film, Come Said the Night. Also tune in to our website, DecayMag.com, for our review on that upcoming film. A lot of news came out from the American film market, and that's an event where filmmakers, producers sell their ideas or their trailers or their production, looking for investors or companies to pick up their films that is either in production or are going into production. And Come Said the Night is one of the films that were completed and were shopped at AFM. Also, we have some other news, horror news, movie news, and of course, we'll be concluding our podcast with trailer first impressions.
Segment 1 Movie News. The Satanic Church sues Sabrina.
Although we have this filed under movie news, this actually is a hot topic right now that is trending, and it has to do with the streaming service Netflix. And also, well, it has to do with the streaming service Netflix, their latest release, which is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and a lawsuit filed by the Satanic Temple. But the Satanic Temple have filed a $50 million lawsuit against Netflix, Warner Brothers Entertainment, over this new series. And the reason is quite baffling, and it does open the doors for copyright infringement, and perhaps the Satanic Temple has a case here. According to the Satanic Temple lawyer Bruce Lederman, he states the following, quote, "This case presents, among other things, a textbook example of the Hornbook explanation of copyright protection, that copyright law protects on unique expressions but not the ideas themselves," unquote. So Stacy, I know that quote right there sounds very technical, but to sum it up, this lawsuit has to do with the statue that the Satanic Temple created that has the 2 children on each side of Baphomet, and Baphomet is actually sitting in a chair with his hand pointing above and one hand pointing below. the icon of Baphomet is as old as the crucifix for Christian and Catholic Church. But they do have a case if they use the statue that they created they added the two kids, and if they used it for the show, they could win this case. What do you think about this, Stacy?
I agree with that. They definitely have a case, but also, and because it says right here, and misrepresented it, so that could be like the target of their case right there. Because remember, Paul was saying that they talked down about it or something like that in the show, and I still haven't gotten to that part yet to see exactly what was said or what they're talking about. But it looks like that right there may weigh heavy on their decision to sue Netflix. Maybe they shed bad light about it or something like that. As we went into that discussion about how things have been perceived bad and evil because people don't understand it and everything.
Right. And you mentioned Paul, that is our peer here in the covering horror in the entertainment journalism, Paul Dosky over at Everything Horror Podcast. And this is correct. The whole misrepresentation of the Satanic Temple, because the complaint reads as follows. I'm going to read a piece of the complaint that was filed in court. It states, the Sabrina series evil antagonists stand in stark contrast to TST's tenets and beliefs by misappropriating TST Baphomet with children, which is a registered copyright and famous mark of TST, to publish this false and defamatory depiction of TST. Defendants have engaged in 3 classes of wrong: copyright infringement, trademark violation, and injury to business reputation. So right there, from the complaint, there's 3 complaints against Netflix, Warner Brothers Entertainment. I think they could have a case here, actually. Like I said, if they created that statue, it's not the image of self of Baphomet. That's like saying you gotta use a crucifix in a film. That's public domain. But if you're using a statue that somebody crafted and it's trademarked and someone owns it, it's like a painting. So yeah. And if you're saying that the Satanic Temple deals with evil and witches and all this misrepresentation of a religion entity, then yeah, I don't think they would win necessarily 50 million. I think most likely Netflix and Warner Brothers, if they know they're going to lose, they will settle.
Yeah, I agree with you there. As you mentioned, it is public domain, but that alone, that statue alone is trademarked, and it's actually it baffles me that Netflix used it without permission. But here we go again. I don't think it's necessarily the permission part of it. It's the misrepresentation. It seems like, that really struck a nerve with TST. That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely. And I think now that we have social media at our disposal, at our fingertips, now I think it would be much easier for other religions or groups of persons to come out and say, hey, you're misrepresenting what we stand for, our religion, our way of life. Remember, we live in an age that everyone wants a piece of the pie of being treated fairly, not being bullied or misrepresented.
Well, I was just gonna say, and in that light, it took me a while to even understand this. But if you don't understand something, it's like do more research. Don't, go on the assumption, because that's how things have been portrayed. And that can actually really strike a nerve with a community, and it's not just Baphomet and TST, even with witches, how they're portraying witches, so that just needed to be, a light right there needs to be shown.
Right. And that is absolutely true. Over the years in horror cinema, witches have been misrepresented as these groups of women who are enchanting or worshipping satanic forces over a cauldron and eating children. That's certainly not the case. That's been misrepresented for years in horror cinema. The Wiccan religion has nothing to do with that whatsoever. But I may add, with every religion, there is a dark side, and of course there is a white side to it. But to always focus on the negative for a religion that does not fall under your personal doctrine, I think horror cinema and filmmakers need to be sensitive to these issues and other people's religion.
And, for filmmakers, you would think that they would do the necessary research needed to understand better. Don't just go based on this assumption, this how things are, because this is what you've been seeing in the movies for centuries, or this is what you've been watching or were, grown up to believe. It just stays right there. It shows right there that not much research on the subject at hand was involved.
Correct. And let's see how this lawsuit develops. This is not the first time. I believe Warner Brothers got in trouble before by using a painting in a movie, The Devil's Advocate, but that's under a different context. Now we have 3 different claims: business reputation, copyright infringement, trademark violation. Let's see how this develops.
Separation cast development.
The cast developments for an upcoming psychological thriller titled Separation is in the works. We have added to the cast actress Mamie Gummer, Madeline Brewer, Violet McGraw, and actor Brian Cox. The film is directed by William Brent Bell, with writers Nick Amadeus and Josh Braun. This is an interesting concept. There's not much information on Separation. According to Deadline, the film takes on a horrific storyline that deals with the consequences of divorce and is being described as a cross between Kramer versus Kramer and films like The Sixth Sense and Mama. Interesting parallels there. In any event, Friend and Gummer would portray the characters named Jeff and Maggie, a newly separated couple battling for custody of their 7-year-old daughter, portrayed by Violet McGraw. Brewer would portray the couple's longtime nanny, and Cox is Nanny's overbearing father. For this segment, Stacy, what can we gather from this? This limited information with this film, but the comparison of The Sixth Sense, Mama, and I'm unsure. Have you seen Kramer versus Kramer?
I have not seen Kramer versus Kramer or Mama, and I actually have that movie. I haven't even opened it yet. The Sixth Sense, though, of course, strikes a bell. So going down that route, I'm visualizing the little girl who's going to be McGraw, the little girl. She's probably going to take on some kind of a supernatural power. Either that or something like supernatural is going to happen. You know, maybe she becomes possessed or something like that, or she gains a, you know, the old play friend, or the, you know, the what you call it, the make-believe friend. So, and I'm thinking of movies like Hide and Seek, for instance.
All right. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. Perhaps the parents are going through a divorce and the child, just like the short film that we had reviewed in a couple of episodes prior to this one, titled Father, in which the kid develops an imaginary father-like creature. I wouldn't call that a friend. He was just a little entity, because he wasn't getting the attention his parents were giving him. So maybe this is a version like that, but full length.
I can definitely see that. And yes, that father character was no friend or anything. So, and if it goes down a route like that, you know, comparing off, that would be very interesting to see.
And Kramer versus Kramer, this is an old film. I wouldn't say old, it's back in the 70s, so that'll make me pretty old too. 1979. And I'm going to read the synopsis to get us a better idea on how separation will come across. So, Kramer versus Kramer. The synopsis is: Ted Kramer's wife leaves him, allowing for a lost bond to be rediscovered between Ted and his son Billy, but a heated custody battle ensues over the divorced couple's son, deepening the wounds left by separation. So, just basically what we're talking about. Perhaps a child is experiencing the trauma of their parents being separated and comes up with a creature. I think we hit the nail on the head of what this film.
Yes.
Interesting. And it just goes to show you horror. This is a fresh idea, and I've never seen this before. And it has a good social commentary, which is divorce. And many audiences can relate to that, because divorce is not something taboo. That's pretty much common these days.
And it also goes worth noting that pretty much anything can be horror or horrifying. You know, at first when you think about things like divorce, you think, well, how is that really horror? But then when you take this spin on it, you know, so you could take anything out there and put a horror spin to it.
Absolutely. I gotta get to fall into that description that you had just provided. You have to give Japanese filmmakers huge applause, because as wacky as some of their ideas are, they could turn anything into a horror film. Case in point, hair extensions. Possessed hair extensions. Come on. When I saw that film, I was laughing. I said, this is gonna be weird. It's weird, but it was fun. It was good.
Are you talking about that one short film during that film festival that we reviewed? This was, I think this was like last year, and I think the boy, he was sitting down to dinner, and then he looks under the table, and then are you talking about that film, or is this a different film?
This is a different film. I'm doing a quick search right now on IMDb.
Oh yeah, the Japanese. For instance, this is probably the most bizarre idea I've ever seen. But in ABCs of Death, F for fart. Like, really?
Right.
Only the Japanese can make a horror or make any kind of film about farts.
Right. And the film I'm referring to was released in 2007 called XT, Hair Extensions, and the synopsis is about hair extensions that attack the women that wear them.
Yeah.
Hey, first of all, I don't see why they should be wearing hair extensions. They have pretty good head of hair. The Asian area Japanese women, but I think that does fall under weird social commentary, and it just ties in with separation. You just take anything, and really, if you work it will come across as something very psychological.
Shudder acquires Nightmare Cinema.
As I had mentioned at the top of our introduction for this podcast, the American film market is a platform where filmmakers, producers, etc., they shop their project and or film to potential investors, distribution company, and this is the do or die place where their ideas, the TV series, film, either gets picked up or it doesn't. And this is the latest news to arise from AFM, the American film market, and Shudder and Cranked Up Films Good Deed Entertainment. They acquired the North American distribution rights to the anthology film titled Nightmare Cinema. The synopsis for this film is: 5 strangers converge at a haunted movie theater owned by the projectionist. Once inside, the audience members witness a series of screenings that show them their deepest fears and darkest secrets over 5 tales. The film is directed by Alejandro Brugués, Ruhei Katamura, David Slade, Joe Dante, and Mick Garris. Stacy, anthology film seems to be the most popular thing now for horror cinema, and in my opinion, it provides the best of both worlds. You got a full feature, and you have short films, so you get both. What do you think about this upcoming project?
I think why that is so successful is because of the short film part. It's not too long, not too short. Because we've talked before about how when it comes to films, and especially short films, it's like a hit or miss. And it could be an instance where the film is not long enough or the film is too long, and you got that dead zone where, nothing is happening, but nothing of interest is happening. So when it comes to these anthologies, and they're closing out around like just the right time, for everything to be portrayed. They don't leave room for any kind of lingering or unnecessary lingering. They get to the point and it pulls out at the right time. And Nightmare Cinema, I do love the concept. Speaking on fears and secrets in horror, that right there is probably one of two of my favorite concepts in horror, touching on fears and secrets.
Right.
So many different paths to go down. Of course, we know there are hundreds of fears out there, and then people and their secrets, so.
Right. And you're absolutely correct with the fact that short films, anthology films, they offer these small, short stories that interlock with one another because they have a central theme. And unlike a full feature film, I know what you're saying. When you watch a feature film, sometimes they have that conversational point, and you wonder, why did the filmmaker put this? It's like it has nothing. It feels out of place. But with the short films, it's just one behind the other. These stories get you engaged, and then you want to know how all these stories wind up connecting at the end of the film.
Right, and back to like full featured films and those annoying conversations that really lead to nowhere. Like the conversation itself has nothing really to do with what's going on in the film. You know, it's just random girl talk, as they say. And especially in found footage films, they do that in found footage films for the first, 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes of the movie is engaging in this small talk. And after it's done, you're like, well, that was a waste of time.
That generally applies to found footage films. Oh, don't get me started on that topic. That's one reason why I don't prefer found footage films, is that first act, which depending on the length of the film could be 30 minutes, could be 35 minutes, but it's just talk, and it just doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Is I don't know. I have no idea why filmmakers do that.
Think about it, this actually makes sense. I mean, how many movies have you seen where after that, that annoying, lingering part of the movie, and when it finally jumps into the main point, it's like, maybe half or more into the film. So when you think about it, say you got a film that's an hour and a half, and the first 40 minutes is just really nonsense before it finally gets into the main part, and then you get this, this whole point of it all, and then the film ends. So when you think about it in that aspect, it's like, okay,
right, yeah, you do have a point there. And for Nightmare Cinema, we have Mickey Rourke. He stars in the film. He's going to be the host, where we know every anthology film has a host. He's going to be portraying the role of the projectionist, and he would be presenting each 5 25-minute short. Interesting. Well, Mickey Rourke, he's gone from major big budget films to the big movie independence of film. Interesting to see. I don't recall Mickey Rourke in a horror film, independent horror film. I'm unsure. I'm not even gonna check the IMDb. I'm gonna rely on my memory here. But any event.
Well, I've heard that name before, and I think I've seen him. I think it was Sin City. Wasn't he in Sin City?
Yes, of course he was in Sin City. Yeah, he was the tough guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see him in there, so I'm like, that name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he very popular.
But I
actor.
wonder if this is kind of a Tales from the Crypt kind of spin. He's the crypt keeper and introducing each film.
Well, every anthology film has that person who introduces the story. We've seen it in Tales from the Hood. We've seen it in I'm trying to remember ABCs of Death. I don't think that one has a host.
No, not really. I mean, there's the intro. There's kind of like a small intro before each installment, I think. I think that's how that is.
This is surprising. And here's a quote from Scott Donnell, founder and CEO of Good Deeds Entertainment. He stated the following: "We have been involved in the film for 3 years, and we couldn't be more excited to continue working with our partners at Shudder and Sinulu to give Nightmare Cinema the release it deserves, unquote. So far, there's no release date for Nightmare Cinema. Perhaps the third to fourth quarter 2018. That would be the mid of the year somewhere. I don't see why it should take longer than that. Everything's complete, filming is done. It's all a matter of Shudder announcing the release date.
And for some reason, it takes Shudder the longest to release a movie. I mean, Dead Wax has been coming soon for a while. And I'm like, okay, would you release the film already?
There must be some red tape along the way for them to have a serious delay for release.
I feel like they should state when films are coming soon when they're actually coming soon, because I think it was for not Downrange, but for Revenge. I mean, they released it as coming soon on the website months ago. And we're just like, when the heck is this movie gonna release? We keep coming soon, and then I think finally 2 months later it finally was released. We're like, really? That ain't soon.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that goes behind the scenes when it comes to film distribution. Of course, you and I, we know there are name changes to the film, other things that get involved. So I wouldn't be too surprised if there's a delay because of that.
And the name change is annoying because in a lot of cases, the original name was better than the name that was chosen.
Yes, I agree. I hope Nightmare Cinema doesn't get a name change. It sounds cool. Nightmare Cinema. It takes place in a movie theater. Hello? Change it to what? Exactly. Just leave it as is.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
You just gotta wait for the release date. That's about it. Hey, I'm looking forward to this.
I am too.
Gretel and Hansel cast developments.
And Stacy, you and I both know as horror aficionados that fairy tales are common to be interpreted in horror cinema. A case in point, Hansel and Gretel. I think there are so many films. We could look up Hansel and Gretel on IMDb and come up with hundreds of films, from big movie productions to B movies. Isn't that right?
Oh yes, they are having so much fun with Hansel and Gretel. Every time I turn around, I see that title, Hansel and Gretel.
Orion Pictures are jumping into this idea of converting Hansel and Gretel into a horror film again. The cast is getting developed, and so far they have top names slated for these roles. We have Sophia Lillis as Gretel. Hansel is going to be portrayed by actor Salmon Leakey. We have Charles Babalola as the character titled The Hunter, Alice Creech and Jessica G. Vore as the cannibalistic witches. So, filming for this new version of Hansel and Gretel is taking place in Dublin, Ireland, and the director is Osgood Perkins, based on the script that he co-wrote with Rob Hayes. So far, of course, since this film is in production, there's no release date. In my point of view, I foresee a release date at the end of 2020 and maybe January 2021. So, Stacy, Hansel and Gretel, how many films have you seen with Hansel and Gretel?
Now that I couldn't even remember, but now that I think about it, it wasn't an actual film that I saw. And Once Upon a Time, in the case with Hansel and Gretel, and in Gravity Falls, that cartoon show, with Hansel and Gretel. Those are not Gravity Falls. It was called Disenchanted. In that case of Hansel and Gretel. So I have not actually seen a movie. And honestly, I haven't even read the fairy tale. I know of it. So there you go. But I do feel like Hansel and Gretel is a very popular concept. It's like everyone, is trying to adapt Hansel and Gretel. And I'm wondering, like, why? And is it because of the witch who eats kids, who cooks kids and eats them? Is people, does that tickle people's fancies of a witch who cooks kids and eat them?
Well, I think, and that goes to the first segment of our podcast where we were talking about the witches and their misrepresentation in horror cinema. But I think Hansel and Gretel, much like many urban legends, has a story about kids who are disobedient, who go to places they shouldn't have. So even with today, the witch could be metaphorical to, let's say, a pedophile lurking in the schoolyard who lures kids with candy or something like that. So it's timeless, and you could keep using it again and again and again.
That's for sure, because they have so many different versions of it. I mean, you got the witch hunters, then you got Hansel and Gretel gets baked. I mean, they actually got baked. Like, okay, so I mean, what was one of the witch's pies made with cannabis? Perhaps we never know.
But here we have actress Sophia Lillis. She just comes off of the huge success of the film It, which of course you have seen many times over.
Yeah, well, she's on the new one. I haven't seen that many times. I've seen the original many times.
Okay. Which I've only seen It once. Quite phenomenal little story there. And the sequel is also in the works. And I believe she's going to be in that one as well.
Are they having that part where it goes back and forth from them being adults to their younger selves, kind of like it does in the original film? Is that what they're going to do?
Right. According to IMDb, she's going to be portraying young Beverly. It's titled It Chapter 2. I don't know if the name would change, but so far that's how it is, and it's in pre-production. I just bring up her name because in Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, I believe, we had two top billed actors in that role, and we all know either love it or hate it. That's a film that's like, okay, depending on who you talk to, they either give it a pass or they have seen it and they enjoyed it.
Segment 2. Exclusive interview. Actress Nicole Moorea Sherman. "Come," said the night.
We devote our Hippocrates, dear Lord of Silence. We give you this graciousness for this meal you've bestowed upon us in the form of quiet reflection and devotion.
What's up with your dad?
He doesn't like it when girls and boys play.
We do this for you and for our fallen daughter, sister, family.
Our exclusive interview segment kicks off with a conversational interview with actress Nicole Moorea Sherman. She portrays the role of Sprout Grady for the upcoming psychological horror thriller Come Said the Night. The synopsis of the film reads as follows. 13-year-old Sprout Grady grows convinced that a monster is haunting the nearby woods. Embarking on a mission to vanquish it, she uncovers horrifying secrets that rock the core of everything she thought she knew. Come Said the Night is directed by Andreas Ryova, and Andreas Ryova serves as writer. In our conversational interview, we discussed the various aspects of this upcoming film, Come Said the Night, as well as Nicole Moorea Sherman's career as a young actress delving into various genres, whether it be family, drama, and in this case, thrillers. We also be touching upon her character Sprout Grady and her interpretation of this complex, layered character. Without further ado, here is my interview with actress Nicole Moorea Sherman. And a little bit about yourself. I'd like to start off the interview by providing a stage for the interviewee to deliver an origin story, a little bit about yourself, your career in film, leading up to this latest role.
I'm originally from Texas, actually, and I started acting 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. I first started acting, when I first started acting, it was a very interesting experience. I had never done anything like it before, and it was a completely new and interesting world for me. And once I did more projects, I got more experience, and it's truly like my favorite thing to do. Because once you're acting, you can take on different personas, and you can tell an important story and really move people or make them laugh, and that's just as important.
That is also true. I commend you. I tip my hat off to you. It's a very challenging field, and especially when you start out young, I always say it's impressive. You have to learn all the lines. You have to get into the emotional the mindset of each character. That must pose a challenge.
It is challenging to find a new angle from where you approach their emotions. But once you do it, it feels like another part of you. So once you've been acting for a while, it feels like once you get a new character, you're like, oh, so which emotion should I do for this? Where should I pull my feelings from? It's a wonderful place to express yourself, and every character is a new experience.
Just glancing over your IMDb, you have such a diverse palette. You from family film to now this intriguing role in a thriller. Which, in your opinion, you find to be more relaxing or more challenging?
I'm not sure which I find more interesting because they're so different. Comedy, it's really fun because you can there's laughter in it and you make people happy, and it's challenging because you've got to make sure the delivery is correct. And drama is interesting because you add emotions and you can really move people, and it's challenging because you have to know how to make those emotions authentic. Thrillers are interesting because you get to scare people, and that's fun. And it's exciting in the makeup. I love all aspects of acting. I'm not really sure which one's the most challenging or the most interesting because they're just all so different and amazing.
And I also noticed you do voiceover work. Is this the typical setup that you would be in the room by yourself, or do you have another actor and you could really feed off of that energy?
In the shows I was in, Little People, we did it all by ourselves. We were in a room, we recorded our pieces, and then they spliced it together to fit into the show. That
to me is quite amazing because you have to play every scene and also play what the other person would be, the dialogue in your mind, as opposed to you doing the dialogue on set with the actor in front of you. That is the challenge of it.
So sometimes the director will ask me to read it in different voices and different tones. And we usually have this process called the ABC process, where we do 3 different versions back to back to back and splice it up each time.
Little insider magic right there. Thanks you for that tidbit. Now for the latest role, Sprout Grady, a very complex character here, and the film itself is quite complex because it deals with so many different aspects of the psychological aspect. When you read the script, what really jumped out to you from this character?
It jumped out to me because it incorporated different parts of it, because it incorporated a coming of age aspect, but also a bit of psychological thrill, which is my favorite kind of scare. So I loved that. I'm also the same age as Sprout, or I was when I filmed it. And I thought that was an amazing character choice for Andy Rivera, because I haven't seen that a lot in media.
Right.
When I first read it, I saw that she was a typical 13-year-old, but she's also she suffers from sleep paralysis. And that is an interesting aspect of the character. And she's also becoming a woman. That's like main aspect of the story, or one of the main aspects of the story. And she's coming to grips with who she is. And she's also dealing with the sleep paralysis. And it's through her journey. And I love that.
Yes, it's quite interesting. And also with the character herself, Sprout Grady, what aspects of this character do you sympathize the most? Because she, from Act 1 to Act 3, she undergoes a lot of, I wouldn't say trauma, but she has a lot of hurdles that she needs to overcome.
Definitely. The first part, she's suffering from loss of her sister, and she doesn't really know how to cope with that because her sister was her world. She learned everything from her sister, and she's having to deal with that. And I think that's very authentic, the way that Andy wrote that, and I hope I portrayed it well.
You did. No worries about that.
Thank you.
It's so mature, and like I said, I gotta restate again. For an actress, a young actress, to portray such a serious role, I just tip my hat off. Something like this, you would see more adult-oriented, but like you had mentioned, it's a coming-of-age story, what makes it more interesting.
I really, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I really applaud Andy Rivera for casting a 13-year-old to play a 13-year-old. Because it makes it more authentic, it makes it realistic, and it feels real when you're watching it. And it's very brave, and I love it. I think that's very important.
Absolutely true, and that's one aspect that makes this film so realistic. And another aspect is the family itself. They're an average family, average setting. We don't see nothing over the top as we would see normally in higher end production films, for example. These are characters we can relate to, and for the father portrayed by Lew Temple, how was that chemistry right there on set? Like, how did you really convey that fear, that vibe, especially in Act 3?
Well, Lew Temple is an amazing actor. I really got to know him during the filming, and he is an amazing scene partner because he's probably the best person I've ever played off of, because he makes it very realistic. When you're acting, it's like you forget that you're doing a scene. It's just what you're saying. It's real. And the struggles between Sprout and her father are, well, they're not realistic. They're out of proportion. They're scary. They're worst possible outcome. But the way that Lew portrayed the character, it feels very real, and that what makes it. He actually has a daughter, and that made all the difference, because he knows how it is to be a father,
Mm.
And I know how to be a daughter.
Right. Being cast with this film alongside Lew, and you have Danielle Harris, were there any learning lessons being cast with veteran actors?
I would definitely say so. Danielle Harris especially taught me a lot of things. During the scenes that I've had with her, she has this one scene with me. She's a fantastic actress. She kind of plays a maternal role for Sprout. Sprout's lacking one, and she gives her advice. And I love doing that scene with her. She is a wonderful actress, and she plays it very realistic. And when you're talking, she's the same traits that Lew has. Like, you forget you're doing a scene. It's just conversation with pre-wrote lines. I love working with them. They taught me a lot.
That's great. It's especially when the film is complex such as this. Every learning lesson counts, and you could take those lessons into the next project and evolve as a performer.
Yeah, exactly. This was a wonderful experience for me. I absolutely loved playing this character, and I got to work with so many amazing people on this project, and it was just the most amazing experience of my life, because I really got to play this amazing character, and I got to bring this wonderful story to life, and it was just an amazing experience.
And how did you come on board with the project for the auditioning process?
Well, I met Andy when I first started acting. He cast me in his first character. It's a regular audition process. I auditioned for the character, and he said, "You're good at this. Let's do this." And this was when I first started acting. It was 5 years ago. My first ever project, and it was a short film. It was a thriller, because he loves scary stuff, and so do I. And from that experience, he said, "I'm going to work on a project. I want to work with you again." And I went, "Oh, that's so sweet." And then 5 years passed. And then I hear from him, and he's like, "Okay, I've got this wonderful project. I'd love for you to be the lead. I don't want anyone else to be this. You should be this character. But I need to have an audition process. So here's a line. Here's some lines." It was 22 pages of script, which is probably the most intense audition I've ever had.
Wow.
But I worked on it the best I could. He also gave me the script so I could really learn the character. And I did my best. I worked hard on the script so I could put this character to life the best I could. And I was casted, and the story progresses.
Wow, that's amazing. A 22 page, usually for the auditioning, it would be just a couple of lines, let's say, off of the script. That must have been daunting right there.
Yeah, it was intense. It was heavy of dialogue. One of the main aspects of the audition was the sleep paralysis, which I personally don't have sleep paralysis, but I learned a lot about it. I did my research so I could portray this character well and actually have this portray it well, be authentic. And Andy Rivera has sleep paralysis himself, and he helped me. He taught me how to. He walked me through what a basic one night would be, and that taught me a lot, because even though I did my research, hearing it firsthand from someone you know is intense, because you can't really take it in unless you 100% trust the person, and I 100% trust Andy. He's a wonderful person. And I learned how debilitating it was. And the hardest part for me was learning how to kind of numb all my senses so I didn't react to anything. So that there was all these things happening around me, and I just had to stay perfectly still. Mm-hmm. And even acting it is scary because you can't react. I couldn't imagine how it would be to actually have the disease.
That is quite interesting. You make you bring up that point that he did have, he does experience this. I find it that filmmakers always infuse of real life experience into their film to make it more scary.
I love when writers do that, because that makes it scarier, and it also makes it more authentic. Like, real life scares, a supernatural being is terrifying because you can't explain it, but real life issues, they're so real. They can happen to anybody. That's what really scares me, when something is that could happen to anyone happens. And I think Andy did a wonderful job with that.
Right. And sleep paralysis is a common thing. Sometimes it's a recurring symptom, and other times it's just a one-time or two-time affair in someone's lifetime. But it is scary. I did experience that myself. And when I saw your portrayal that you were gasping for air and you couldn't move, and how the director really captured the motion of your body, I was like, wow, that's pretty much how it is.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored to do that part. I'm really glad that I brought that to life, because I wanted people to see what it was like and understand what it is and how hard it would be. And I'm really honored to have that part, and I'm glad you saw it.
Right. And it all comes to research. You did your research, you did the study, you got involved in the role and really projected that onto film. Another thing, for the scenes, especially when we have the supernatural or something alluding to the supernatural, was that on set, or was it something that you had to conjure in your mind and it was edited in later?
There was this wonderful actress. She played the Gorgon, and she was amazing. She was doing this one scene with me, and she moved to where it was almost, she turned invisible in the light. And I was watching in front of her, and I was scared, even though I knew exactly what was happening. But she's just so talented. It was scary. She moved her body. She manipulated herself to be terrifying. Christine was so wonderful in her portrayal of the Gorgon, and I truly applaud her for doing that. Playing a monster is hard. It's hard work. There's this heavy makeup and suit she had to wear, and she did it in the woods. She moved, and she was majestically terrifying.
Oh, it really conveys the message, and stellar work right there. For your future projects, do you see yourself working in this particular genre, doing another thriller or horror film?
I hope so. I'm auditioning all the time. I love working in this genre because it's fun, to say the least, and you can always, I love adding an important, tell a real story in the horror, and I hope that this part can lead to more parts like this, because it's so much fun and I love doing it. So I hope so.
Well, I hope so too. One question for social media, since you're starting out your career, is that another area where you're going to explore and release content on your career, perhaps a web series or something like that?
Yes, I am looking into that at the moment. I am working on a YouTube channel at the moment, so I can provide content. I have an Instagram and a Twitter. Both are Nicole.m.Sherman, if you want to give that a follow, And I think social media is a large aspect of any person in the media, because you get yourself out there, and it's very interesting because you can show a part of yourself. You can connect with people on there, and anyone who follows me, I love having any interaction with someone who follows me, because I can see who they really are and how they see me, and I love it.
Right. And I'm glad that you do take the time to connect with the audiences. That shows that connection right there. It just not only grows your following with numbers, but it grows your following with people who really want to see your career grow and flourish.
Thank you. I love interacting with people because I get to know them, and we can have similar interests. We can learn about each other, and they're not just someone online. They're a person, and when you actually interact with them, you kind of realize that when you see a number of people following you, it's a number of people following you. But when you talk to them, it's like, this is a real person that wants to know me in real life, and I want to know them. And they always have, most of them have like interesting stories that they tell, and I love interacting with people, and it's really great.
That's great. That's great to hear. And closing out the interview, come said the night. What is one or a couple of highlights that you would like to let the listeners know about this film so they could come check it out?
Well, I think a very important aspect is the female empowerment aspect of it. All throughout the cast and crew, this film is a very strong female presence. There's me, Danielle Harris, the cinematographer, Madeline Kate She, wonderful person to work with. And I think that aspect of female empowerment and about story arc is really important for people, and I hope that draws some people in because I think it's important.
Right, thank you. And the final question is much easier. It's an inspirational part of that I'd like to put into the interview. Any comments you care to add for listeners out there who share the same age as you, or perhaps someone older who want to jump into the performing arts, and also add your social media handles and anything you care to add?
Well, you have to follow your dreams. That's all of it, really. When you break it down, you have to follow your dreams, follow what you love, and you shouldn't let anyone hold you back. You have to keep going. You have to be persistent. You have to hone your craft, just like any other skill. And it's important to practice. And I encourage anyone who feels that they want to be an actor or an actress that they should. It's a wonderful experience, and it's hard work. And some people put it as this glamorous experience, and sometimes it can be. But other than that, it's a wonderful experience of learning about yourself, learning about how you would portray a character, learning about how you feel that certain emotions balance out a character, and learning how hard you want to work for this. And I really encourage anyone who wants to do it, because I know I learned a lot about myself as well as the business when I started. And I'm definitely not the same person I was. I'm definitely not the same person I was. I'm definitely not the same person I am now as I was then. And acting taught me a lot of things, and I am forever grateful.
Great, thank you for that. And also for your social media, I believe you have already mentioned it. You're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, correct? Great.
I do have an Instagram and a Twitter, and I believe a Facebook. I do have a Facebook, yes. Sorry. Mind blank there. My Instagram is Nicole.m.Sherman, and my Twitter is Nicole.m.Sherman. That's the handle I use. And I post fairly regularly, and my Facebook is, I think, Nicole.m.Sherman as well. I'm definitely not as active as I am I'm not active. I'm not as active on Facebook as I am on Twitter and Instagram, but I do maintain it. And if you guys want to give it a follow, go ahead.
Yeah, there's always one social networking platform that we favor over the other. That's perfectly fine. I do the same thing too myself. Thank you.
Glad it's not just me.
No, it's not. And Facebook seems to be the one I neglect too. I love Instagram and Twitter for some reason over Facebook. Thank you so much for your time for this interview, and best of luck on your career. I see great things happening, and congratulations on this role come said the night.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have this interview with you, and thank you for giving more time to talk to me.
Segment 2. Exclusive interview. Actor, Lew Temple. Come, said the night.
1 year ago today, you ushered our sweet Magdalene into the great beyond.
Have you ever felt that way about a boy?
Not allowed.
We're not here to question your mysterious will, but to honor the memories of our beautiful Magdalene.
You will feel what I feel. You're gonna feel it right down in your pit.
Our coverage for the upcoming psychological horror thriller Come Said the Night continues with our exclusive interview with actor, producer Lew Temple. Mr. Temple serves as actor and in this upcoming film, and he portrays the role of character Roy Grady. It is an honor and a pleasure to feature Mr. Lew Temple here on our podcast, DecayMag podcast. His contributions to the horror genre are outstanding and memorable, and most would recognize Mr. Temple for his portrayal in a very popular zombie post-apocalyptic television series. But aside from that, Mr. Temple delivers outstanding roles across the board in horror cinema, and his latest role, Come Said the Night, is no exception. A fine film this is that encompasses a coming of age plot revolving around dysfunction in a family, as well as other social commentaries that horror cinema is known for. This is a platform I emphasize time and time and again. Horror cinema is a outstanding platform to present social commentary, whatever the topic that is plaguing our day-to-day lives. You would find it as metaphors in the various subconscious psyches or supernatural projections of current filmmakers. With that said, here is my interview, my conversational interview with actor Lew Temple, where we will be discussing the various aspects of his role as Roy Grady in the upcoming film Come Said the Night. And I usually start off the interview by providing an opportunity for the interviewee to deliver an origin story. But I am assumed that our listeners would know a lot about your career.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been such a gift for me to be able to do as much as I have done. I thank you. Depending on what time of year it is, people know you for different things. As it's the Halloween season. Excuse me. The Halloween season, some people may know me from Rob Zombie's Halloween or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or even as a guest judge on Halloween Wars. But most specifically lately, and for the last several years, people know me as Axel from The Walking Dead. And that show that has become ever so popular, I was very fortunate to have been a part of in season 3 as the colloquial, lovable prisoner Axel, who some say met his demise too soon. So I will go with that. Thank you.
In my opinion, I feel most of the characters in that show met their demise a little bit too soon.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And we continue. The show just continues, and yet, our heart gets broke each time we lose a character, and we get excited when new characters come on, and all things are just like life. There's highs and or lows, and we keep moving forward.
That is certainly so true. And that's where art parallels real life situations.
No doubt. Absolutely. And Ken, I think that's exactly why The Walking Dead is as popular as it is, because I think that it mirrors life. I think that in fact we started with this show with a subject matter that included walkers, and I think the walkers were a metaphor for our day-to-day survival tactics and techniques, and the walkers were representative of debt and mortgage and finance and the price of gas and the price of milk and healthcare and education and parents falling ill and stumbling blocks along the way, and then the show transitions into having an obstacle of each other, which certainly in our civil unrest in today's society we encounter. And all these things, I think, are very pertinent and part of what our day-to-day social commentary is in The Walking Dead, no doubt.
Right. You bring an interesting point, and something that I always emphasize in practically every interview is that the horror genre and science fiction are a great platform to deliver such social commentary that reflects our day-to-day life.
No doubt about it. I feel like, as is the case in a lot of things, when you peel the layers away from, extreme measures, we get down to the minutia of what's at the heart of the matter. And I think that the horror genre actually really exemplifies that. I think the horror genre takes very basic survival instincts and heightens them, but gets down to the same, bottom line. And agendas, everybody has an agenda, and what is the integrity of that agenda and how is it implemented on others is what type of, citizen you are. So, yeah, entirely. It's quite interesting that way.
It's absolutely true. And thank you so much for your contribution to the horror genre. It's fantastic. And I'm looking over your IMDb. I am in awe of your upcoming projects that you have. Wow, it's amazing. You keep yourself busy.
Somehow, I'd like to think that the idea that these projects find me is serendipitous, but also is right. So in other words, the projects that I'm doing are the ones that I should be doing. Mm-hmm. The projects that I get involved with are the ones that will make a difference, and for not just for me, but for the filmmakers that I'm trying to serve, for the audience that I'm trying to serve. All of those that are engaged in the horror genre and are so loyal and so well versed. I'd like to think that those projects that I'm involved with are the things that I'm supposed to be doing, and that I keep continuing to get to do them. It is, I'm very grateful. I have a lot of gratitude towards.
Thank you once again. And we're going to jump into your latest role. Said the night in which you portray the character Roy Grady. I must say, this is a fine example of what we were just discussing about social commentary. This film exemplifies psychological various traits of conflict, loss in the family. A little bit about your character, Roy Grady, and how he comes across to you in this film.
Well, as you know, and thank you for those comments. Thank you for watching it, by the way. And I'm so proud of this movie, and not just my place in this movie, but everybody's. I'm actually, I'm thrilled for Andres Rivera, Andy Rivera, who is the writer and director of the film. He brought this project to me on recommendation from his mentor, Robert Zuckerman, who is a beautiful, beautiful still photographer that captures life and the kindness of life, the harshness and the kindness of life, and mentors Andy, and then knows me and says, the two of you have something to do together. And Andy brings this project to me, and I read it, and I'm taken back. It is the story of a single parent. And that in and of itself is a reality. That in and of itself is a horror story on its own. And we have to look no farther than the Babadook to realize that. Roy is a flawed person, no doubt. He's two people, actually. And in making this movie, I had to have righteous Roy, who is the parental figure, who is believes in polythenesis, which is the belief in several gods. There's a God, there's a reason for everything, and that reason is headed up by a God. There's a God for weather, a God for food, a God for finance, and should things not work out, it's because you've angered that God, and you must atone, and you must apologize and make good with that God. And who is your patron God? That is my lesson to my two small children, who I reclusively have brought out to the woods to teach them and get them away from the otherness, the clutter of today's society. New York City, Brooklyn, by God, there's too much going on. There's too much stimulus and too much following of the wrong, the wrong leaders in that society. So I bring them out in the woods to raise them. So that's one side of this parent. But the other side is someone who is broken. His wife has left him. He is sexually repressed. He doesn't have the emotional skills to deal with loneliness. He doesn't have the emotional skills to deal with his obsessiveness, for his personality type. He's overwhelmed with things that he encounters and yet isn't a part of. He's a little bit disenfranchised. So he's kind of raising his children on the fringe based on his belief system, and not really giving them good sound judgment to navigate the world. And then we see that this all comes collapsing down like a house of cards. But the real story, Ken, is the story of a 13-year-old girl coming of age.
Right.
When I say coming of age, I mean chemically coming of age in the form of a menstrual cycle. What it is, the horror of being a 13-year-old girl, and that change and that development is a hybrid horror story in and of itself. And I wanted this to be its own genre of the girls, the young ladies' transitional horror story. Not a scream queen, not an ingenue that's being chased by a monster, that's the object of desire, but just someone that has to navigate the real world and how terrifying that can be. So I feel like we're really moving into the psychological, the psychological warfare, the psychological horror and terror of real issues. And I think you and I have talked about that, and I think that's real. So that was our task, to set out and design that. And it wasn't without a fair share of obstacles. Our budget, our resources as far as days to work, the fact that we had 3 young children, 3 young actors on set, and laws allow us only to work them a certain amount of time. The fact that they had to be in school while on set. So young Nicole Sherman, our lead, would be doing algebra equation and then step away from that to emote, to deal with issues of being a 13-year-old girl, which she barely understands herself, being 13, yet had to deal with them and manipulate them as if she were an adult. These were all huge, huge tasks, and I'm so proud to have accomplished it and to have been a small part of it.
Right. As a matter of fact, just an hour ago, I got off the phone speaking with Nicole in her interview, and I have to also express for this segment, there is so much realism when it comes to this film. The on-screen chemistry between yourself and Nicole is both surreal and real. It really, the audiences, if they're astute to detail, would really capture that emotional content.
Well, I feel that it was entirely important for me to build a relationship as a professional with Nicole, but also as a person, so that she felt safe in an environment to explore some of the themes that we were addressing. And I had to do that to begin with, and not just Nicole, but also Tate, who plays my son, and young Max, who is on set as one of the young boys that comes over for a play date. All of these young people needed to be in an environment where they could take some risks. So I felt like we needed to, first of all, establish a relationship that was Lew Temple and Nicole Sherman and Tate Birchmore and Max Page outside of our characters. And that started for me with the parents. So their parents were on set the entire time, and I felt that their parents needed to trust me. So I worked very hard at building that rapport. And then once the parents signed off and said, hey, this guy's okay, you can play with this dog and he won't bite you, that I could start to build sort of our friendship and our relationship on set so that we could discuss as professionals our intentions. And I think that was really important. And people will say that the harshness and the darkness of the film must be so difficult, and it is. But all that's on the page. Stuff that wasn't on the page, Ken, is the family structure, the family togetherness, and that was the most difficult thing to build. The dinner table, the dancing out in the yard. I felt like we really had to connect that with the audience so they didn't look at us and go, these people are off balance. I mean, I didn't mind if they thought we were off balance, but as long as they thought, well, it seems to work and they seem okay and happy. We needed to land that first before we could start tearing it down. And so that was a lot of work, believe it or not.
Right. With horror cinema, and you have alluded to this point in your statement earlier, the coming of age portion of this film, the psychological aspect, but we really see in Come Said the Night is the character development. The director writer really took the time to craft each person, each individual, And later in Act 3, when things start turning for the worst, the audiences will connect and they want to know, okay, wow, what is going on here?
Yeah, I feel like Andy, obviously his script is so layered and so interesting that brings, my attention to the project, but that he was able to have the flexibility on set. And again, our time being a resource was very limited to be able to, attend to conversations about, well, why are we doing this? Or what does this indicate? What's our intention here? And he was very good at being open and developmental with all those ideals. And because of that, Ken, that he was able to capture, an authentic performance from each of us, which is, that has to happen. Otherwise, we're just painting by numbers. And I feel like some of the organic things that happen are a byproduct of Andy trying things, going outside of the box. And so I was really impressed with that. As a young director, wasn't someone that showed up and said, well, here's what it is to be a single parent. Here's what it is to believe in Zeus or Harpocrates. Here's what it is to, with a really great bewilderment or wonder about the possibilities. And I think that's a credit to his filmmaking. I also think it shows up in the film, and it's a credit to the film.
Mm-hmm. And one of the topics that you also point out is the topic of religion here, and it transcends cultures. When I saw the film for the first time, I could relate. In the Latino community, there is certain religions that worship different deities, and different deities signify different courses of whatever life course that you got to do. So I was like, wow, that would really parallel into so many. It crosses genres. Not only that, but it also crosses cultures.
Right, and that was important. That one of the things that drew me to the project was the fact that it was so outside of the box. We never do it. When we were children, we loved Greek mythology. We loved Zeus, and we loved Medusa, and we loved the Gorgons, and we Dionysus and Pegasus, and then we kind of go away from that as we grow older. So we don't get to experience Greek mythology as much. And I was really interested in that, and really interested in the idea that, this is a very convenient ideology where for every problem, there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
If it rains in Brooklyn today, that is the god of weather. And for some reason, you have offended that god, and you must atone and apologize. And the weather then will be fruitful. Or in fact, you're getting rain because your crops need it or whatnot. So I love that ideology. And to give that as reason to a child makes so much sense. And the belief system is so available and accessible until you start to develop some of your own thinking. And then it kind of, the grip of control starts to loosen a little bit, which is a real problem, a real obstacle for Roy, who's by nature on the fringe of society as it is, and then to lose his children in control of them would be just the worst. It would be the ultimate, outcome of failure. So, yeah, I loved the idea that we were bringing a different religious concept. It's not different. It's been around. It was the first religion. Let's be honest.
Right.
It's something we don't visit very much. We spend a lot of time on Catholicism and Christianity, but we don't visit Greek mythology very much, and I wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And for the character Roy Grady, after reading the script, what was a couple of thinking points that really stuck out for you that you really sympathized with this character?
Well, I understood not having any experience, but other than having grown up with a single parent, a single mother, I understood the difficulty of what that is. And knowing single parents, I recognize the hugeness of that task. So immediately that took to me. We have archetypes in our storytelling, whether it be film or television or even in books or paintings or art, about the male who is the hunter, gatherer, provider, protector.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not really focusing on what's occurring now, which is also the nurturer. Sometimes there's a single father that has to be all things encompassed, not unlike a single mother that also has to be protector and hunter-gatherer and provider as well as nurturer. And I was heightenedly interested in that. And the fact that he was flawed to begin with, had to keep that as a secret and try to control that. And yet it becomes his undoing. Ultimately, all secrets do become revealed. And so those were keynotes, those were hashtags in his character description that I connected with immediately. And really, I thought he was just an entirely interesting character and was something that would be a great challenge to me, to be a family guy that had a focus and an approach that was rather of the earth and rather hippie, sort of cool and might be a cool dad, and then kind of goes a little off the beaten track with his absolute, requirement of worshiping a particular god, selecting your god, who's your patron saint, and then loses it entirely and becomes Wreck-It Roy in this, this is, I've got to put an end to this situation, termination.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realize the monster isn't what we think it is. So I really became drawn to those character types.
I would not classify him as the antagonist, given that his character is so conflicted internally. He wouldn't necessarily be the antagonist in this case. For your portrait of this particular character, what was the different facets that you really had to delve into? Because he has such a wide range of emotion here.
Yeah, I think the main thing was to be a likable dad. So someone that you could sympathize with. In that last speech, someone that you're like, oh, are the children going to take him back?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to fall back into the fray? So I felt like I needed to land a guy that just couldn't help himself, that was sorry, that was conflicted and out of control, but was trying and likable. And so those were all difficult tasks. It would be easy just to play the one note. The temptation of Danielle Harris's character coming right in front of him and tempting him as a seductress. And yet she's also a single woman that is a mother. It's just looking for company, and loneliness in and of itself becomes a disease widespread. We experience that right now in social media. We go to our Facebook page or our Twitter page and put a post out there just so that we can get 4 or 5 likes to give us the dopamine that makes us feel good to get through the day. I mean, come on, we experience that amongst all of our followers. We're lonely people. And I wanted Roy to have all those earmarks outside of the society's boundaries today, outside of social media, outside of cell phones, outside of the internet, outside of, and to show, look, being human is a sickness in all facets of life.
Mm. Interesting perspective. And I wholeheartedly agree. You would think with social media, humans would be more connected. And it seems like we're more far apart and lonely in this day of age.
Yeah, it seems to me as well, you know, and the idea that you can escape it, I guess that was another part. Like, who of us hasn't at one point or another just said, I'd love to go out into the wilderness or a small town, probably more reasonably a small town, and just kind of get back to a way of life that is simpler. And that has its complications in and of itself. I don't think that would band-aid or remedy any of our problems. And small towns have just as much civil unrest as the city of New York, you know, in different forms, but right. It's there. So you can't run or hide or become recluse. You can't recluse into the problem. Mm-hmm. Not unlike you can't keep a secret.
Mm-hmm. Right. So true. For your character, Roy Grady, I see it's much easier to project an antagonistic character to audiences, especially in the horror genre. But in this case, portraying a mild-mannered individual has its own challenges. You have to convince the audience that everything is going fine and dandy with this guy until the final reveal.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. You know, I felt like we were on track, and then we would get into a scene or a situation, and I'd be nervous about allowing too much or showing too much teeth. Mm-hmm. You know, and thankfully Andy was, you know, he was on top of that and saying, no, I think we got just enough, and there's every scene had its level of profoundness. There's a scene where I'm by myself that I howl at the moon, mm-hmm. and it's a transitional scene. That scene for me was the Garden of Gethsemane. That scene to me was praying to my Father, if I'm to take this cup, please don't make me drink, but yet your will be done. It was that scene to me of this must now happen, and that transition. And there's no going back, and I've lost it. And to remove my clothes and become feral of sorts was important and difficult, you know, and the nuance of that is, you know, coming up and doing a tribal dance that is, you know, very, you know, firm and focused. You know, there's what was the appropriate dance, this Maori, you know, warrior dance, you know, what, as opposed to the dance the ladies were doing, which was quite seductive, you know, these types of things, one very male, one very female. Mm-hmm. All these nuances were really thought about and discussed. I'm very fortunate because the producers, Colby Miller, James Daytree, who have started this new film company, Miller Daytree Pictures, they were so supportive and so involved and engaged, and gave me a lot of confidence in their support, as well as Andy. So a lot of work goes into building a mild-mannered protagonist that slowly becomes unraveled over the course of our 90 minutes.
Right. Yeah. In particular, I'm glad you brought that particular scene up because, in my opinion, when I saw the film, I knew that was animalistic transformation, not plain in sight, but it was just a metaphor that this guy is going through a metamorphosis in his mental state. It was well executed.
Thank you. Yeah, and you know, and it was enough. You know, you're always at a point you're making a movie and you're trying to land everything in the script that is important, because everything in the script is important, and how much is too much and what's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where do we draw the line? Where do we make things odd? You know, one of the interesting things, and you brought this up, Ken, is there's an element of Roy that's rather playful. You know,
right.
Occasionally he will run with his daughter, or he will give them, you know, gamesman challenges. I'll beat you. No, you won't. Oh, yes, I will. You know, or climb a tree or leap over something. I wanted him to be childlike with his children on the front end, so that when it transitions, it really becomes a reveal. And you know, that stuff again becomes the task. But I'm very grateful that I had support, not just from Andy and Colby and James, but also someone like Nicole, who was willing to experience that. And okay, that's weird, but okay, I think I know what you're trying to do. Okay, you know, and you know, when you have more time, you get to work through those things. But at some point, there's a fair share of blind faith based on whatever experience that I have, that I bring from my years of service in storytelling, to someone's earnest, this is how things are for a 13-year-old, mm-hmm. and with a great skill set like Nicole. So I felt like I learned a lot myself, and I that's why I do this. It's really to grow. It's to evolve in storytelling. And you know, when you think you know it all, you've got a lot to learn.
Right.
So
right.
I learned as much on the set from those young people as I hope they learned a few things from me as well.
Right. And that comes across the board in the performing arts, is always that constant gaining knowledge. Even as you have stated, you could be a veteran in the field, but there's these little details that you'll pick up and you'll put onto the next project.
You know, I'm going to reference a quote that was given to me recently, just before he passed. There's a very fine actor who I worked with in The Walking Dead, Scott Wilson, who played Herschel. We were having a conversation a few months back, and he said, "Lew, never forget how to start over again." And I wasn't sure at the time what that meant, but I realized that you're ever evolving, you're ever starting over, you're ever rebooting the game, you don't start hide and go seek right in the middle. You start it over from the beginning. You play like from the beginning, you know, and when you forget how to start it over, you might be a little lost. So I'm going to take that to heart and try to start over again in my efforts in storytelling.
That wisdom to live by, those words right there. And touching on that, just a couple of last questions for our interview. Since we are on the topic of inspirational quotes, I always like to infuse that part in our interviews. And given your vast career, starting out in smaller roles and now as lead, what advices do you give for those out there who want to jump into the performing arts?
You know, I like the idea that no one can walk out on their own story. So in other words, you do have a story to tell. You will tell a lot of stories. A lot of them will not be your story, but eventually not unlike a secret. You must tell your story. So I would say, tell your story. I would even go so far as to say, don't waste time telling other stories. Get busy telling your story, because in the end, you must do it.
Mm-hmm.
It is your destiny to tell your story. Whether that's in art, in music, in writing, in acting, in finance, in social work, in political advocacy, your story must be told. And, you know, that's not a new theory. We've been doing that. You know, we'll use a buzzword like branding. What's your brand?
Right.
Who are your brand? You know, that, you know, this all gets back to that basic. Tell your story. And we want to hear that. You know, most people want to meet you, Ken. They don't want to meet Ken presenting himself like someone he thinks they want to meet. That's what I run into in auditions all the time. I think somebody wants to see Axel. The reality is they want to see Lew.
Right.
They want to know who Lew is doing Axel, not who Axel is. They've got a pretty good idea who Axel is. So I think that's all part of telling your story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Especially when an actor portrays a certain role and he is known for that role, I tend to steer away from that. And I know there's so many aspects to a particular actor's career that you could delve into as the person, as the individual.
Yeah, and I have the good fortune of getting to work with some of these great talents, and I think that's truly the gift that I get, is to look across the table or across from me and see this inspiring body of work being, you know, catapulted into this story, and I'm like, my God, what is the courage? How can I help? Look at the work this person is putting forth. What is my place to help? And that's how I go into it. How do I serve? And that's been a good provision for me for many years now. So it's a gift. It's truly, I'm grateful for it.
That is so true. And to close out our interview, any future projects that you can share? I'm aware that there's some projects you can't, and also if you have social networking handles that you would like to put out there for the audiences to follow you.
You know, I can pretty much talk about every project that I'm engaged with. I know we're in such a world of secrecy today, and we don't want to, you know, let the stories out of the bag. I have recently, this past summer, gotten to work with this young director who I think might find his way in this industry, named Quentin Tarantino. I'm involved in a project called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is it's like being invited to the all-star team. You know, it's amazing, and just to be in the team picture with this cast is quite an honor. You could have asked anybody, and while I don't do a lot in the movie, just to be there is truly a gift. So, and getting to be on that set and watching again these greats work is, I think, the exposure that very few get to do, and especially at a level like a Tarantino film, which is just huge. You know, it's amazing. I have a project out right now called Feral with Scout Taylor Compton. We know her as Laurie Strode from the Halloween franchise, Rob Zombie's Halloween franchise. It's directed by Mark Young. It's out on Blu-ray right now, and I think Netflix. It's a creature feature, cabin in the woods, a little smarter. It's young medical interns deciding whether or not to bring the virus they've encountered back into society or to terminate themselves out in the woods. I think that movie's done really well. It's been critically reviewed well. I did another movie for Mark, which is coming onto the festival circuit, called Limbo, which is the judgment of your soul between heaven and hell and purgatory. DA headed up by God, and the prosecuting attorney headed up by Satan's attorney. So it's a courtroom drama between heaven and hell, which is really cool. There's two films I just got back from the Austin Film Festival that are outside of the horror genre. One is The Iron Orchard, which is a period piece about wildcatting, drilling for oil, like There Will Be Blood or Giant. And another is a kind of a dark Coen Brothers type comedy called Texas Cotton. It's in the vein of Chinatown. It's rather interesting and fun. I think it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I've got a fair share of things going and lined up for the next year. A movie called Dirge, which is over in the UK, which I'm producing. It's again a psychological terror about loss and grief and the horror that can be. And so you can keep up with me on Twitter. I'm Lew Temple actor on Twitter, and Instagram, just simply Lew Temple. So I try to keep everyone apprised of where I'm going. We stay busy at conventions with The Walking Dead. We come out and sign autographs and meet the audience, and that's always a joy. So heads up on my whereabouts. I would love to meet you.
Right. Thank you for that information. And as a matter of fact, I had Pharaoh on my to-watch list. Well, I guess I'll watch it this week.
Good. You're gonna like it. I think you'll appreciate it. It's fine work, and I'm really proud of it and excited to be part of that cast. It's such a handsome cast, and I think they do such a great job. I'm the old man in it, but I have a lot of fun.
Oh, I'll definitely catch that. Thank you so much for your time and for this interview. Greatly appreciate your portrait of Roy in Come Set the Night. Is really very good psychological film. I'm sure audiences would agree.
Well, thank you so much for having me. DecayMag appreciates you and your efforts, and keep on discovering the truth in the genre and the support. It's so appreciated, and we'll keep putting out great material for y'all.
Segment 3. Trailer First Impressions, Clownado.
Source, radar indicated rotation. Impact, flying debris will be dangerous to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be damaged or destroyed. Damage to roofs, windows, and vehicles will occur. This dangerous storm will be near. Take cover now. Move to a basement or an interior room.
The goal with Clownado is to make a damned good, scary, and splatter-filled, non-stop roller coaster ride of a horror movie. It's something new, fresh, original, and unique, but also familiar. Using only practical special makeup effects and old school visual effects, Clownado has the vibe of classic horror movies we love. Think Evil Dead, Dead Alive, Bad Taste, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre if Lucio Fulci was directing, all mixed in a swirling storm of insanity. Now add in scary supernatural clowns and the cinematic visual style known as film noir, intense composition with shadow and light, and a bit of that incredible John Carpenter suspense. And you have an ambitious, over-the-top, gore-fest epic. Don't judge a book by its cover. This is certainly no comedy. Well, I must say this is probably the first time IMDb has a synopsis summary that doesn't even really summarize the movie. Sorry, that was so hyped up.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, Clownado is directed by Todd Sheets. He's also the writer. Stars Linnea Quigley, Eileen Dietz, Julie Ann Prescott and Dylan Fawn Harvey. Wow, again, like I said, that synopsis, that's the first time I've seen a synopsis that don't really summarize the movie. It just talks all about its good parts and it just hyped it up. I'm like, wow, okay. And Clownado, I must say, is my most anticipated movie. That trailer, man, wow, you can definitely see the gore fest in that, okay?
Right.
So, and what do you think about Clownado?
Well, first of all, the title, I said to myself, oh my gosh, really? Who came up with this title? But of course, you have to appreciate creativity in horror films. So going into this trailer, I must say, one of the aspects that I really look forward to in a film, they showcased it. And that's practical effects. For audiences that appreciate gore in their horror films, I don't think this film would disappoint. And it looks good. The gore does not look cheap at all. You see guts, you see blood. The blood looks consistent. The guts look consistent. I may watch this film and actually enjoy it, despite the title saying Clownado.
And this looked like one of those movies where they put a heavy investment into the special effects, because that acting is a different story.
That is correct. And we see that time and time and again when filmmakers really emphasize the visuals, and in this case the practical effects, the acting suffers. But of course, let's see how the story is. Maybe we could set aside that the acting is really B-movie style acting, but the story may be good. And of course, as it's shown in the trailer, the practical effects is well commended there.
Oh yes, and yeah, I couldn't get over the practical effects. I started to watch it again. I mean, you just hear all the like blood gushing and the bones cracking and the pulling out the intestine. I'm just like, oh man, that's gonna be gross, but such a good time.
Right, precisely. Yeah, the only negative I have with the film is the acting, and also the cinematography is another highlight for me. You could really tell the cinematography, they showcase it in the trailer as well, especially the close-ups when the clowns, I don't know where they come from, apparently from the storm, they really emphasize they're coming at you. People are actually scared. The camera work is in their face. Yeah, it looks to be one of those films that is gonna fly under the radar and have so many good merits for it.
Also, I feel like, yeah, I'm like, oh wow, killer clowns from outer space for real. But these posters, I think the poster art could be better.
Right.
I mean, they're just so generic.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. They could have hired a good retro artist to come up with a better poster, because the film to me looks retro. For some reason, it just sticks out that way. I'm not, something about it, the color tone, it just seems retro. But using modern comedy, Sharknado, the storm, how these clowns are coming in the storm, interesting.
A retro sleaze fest. And yeah, don't forget all those bones crushing. That's, yeah. Okay, so what is that going to be like? 90 minutes of blood gushing, bone crushing, soul stealing,
clowns,
intestine grabbing.
And you can't go wrong with clowns. There are many people that have a phobia with clowns, and this film is not helping the cause of making clowns happy, cheery. No, it's not gonna work.
Oh no, this is probably gonna be one of the grossest clown films I've ever seen. Even Eli Roth's clown wasn't as bad as was portrayed in the trailer.
Right.
Or
and
I
bad.
should say as gory.
Gory, right. I was about to say bad, you mean gory.
Not bad, gory. Yes,
Right.
gory.
But there's also a flip side to it. Sure. Sometimes I like to see a horror film that has a lot of gore and okay, put the story at the side. Sometimes I don't want to think too much on a certain film. I just want to kick back and relax. This film is one of them. But how much can you really put in a film without it being desensitized to the visuals? And you're like, oh, okay, his head got cut off. Okay, next. Yeah, you kind of feel numb after a while.
Yeah. This definitely probably won't be one of those films you eat spaghetti to, huh?
Absolutely. This is a spaghetti movie, and I use that reference. Like you want to have dinner, and in my case, spaghetti and meatballs, or pasta, or chicken parmesan. You want to have dinner, watch the film, and cup of
Mine
wine.
will probably be cookies and milk.
You go straight to dessert.
I do. Because 9 times out of 10, I done already had my dinner before watching the film. So yeah, I'm more of a snack and movies girl.
There's nothing wrong with that. My go-to dessert would have to be that double thick layered chocolate cake. You know, the one that is kind of warm and you have the cold ice cream next to it. I forgot the name of that dessert. It's tasty. Get it at Red Lobster, one of those places.
Oh, okay.
But in any event, Clownado, sure, I'll check it out. I'm curious to see how this film is.
Yeah, me too.
House of the Gorgon.
Don't look. Shield your eyes. For on the day you look upon them, you will surely die. House of the Gorgon.
Why don't you let us alone? Get back on your train and leave us.
Next in our third segment, trailer first impressions, is House of the Gorgon. I have to say it, I have to emphasize it. House of the Gorgon. Hey, I can't avoid it. It just has that title. You have to emphasize it. The synopsis: a young woman must save herself and her family when her fiancé unleashes an ancient horror. House of the Gorgon is directed by Joshua Kennedy and written by Joshua Kennedy. Wow. The trailer to this film. Okay, I could understand where filmmaker Joshua Kennedy is going. It does have it has B-movie acting. Sure, the visuals are campy, yes, but the creative direction that he's going for is emulating those retro 50 movie era films where even if the film has so many mistakes, you just gotta accept it because during that time they didn't have the capacity to be so elaborate with the sets and everything. That's how I interpreted the film. So from your point of view, Stacy, what did you think about this trailer?
I do know a lot went on in that trailer, and actually I felt more like I was watching a Broadway show.
Right,
than
exactly.
a film.
Yes.
And not that that's a bad thing, you know, it's a good thing, but that's what I felt like it would have been a Broadway show. As far as the creativity goes, definitely. A lot of creativity is in there.
Yes. And the aspect that is a minus for me, but I don't see it as a minus because, as I explained, you're trying to emulate horror cinema of yesteryear. That's how the actors portrayed these roles, they were so campy by dialogue, and watching a filmmaker reinvent that it's pretty cool. I have to give it to the cast, whether intentional or not. The acting is spot on for those old horror films.
Oh yes, that that acting, man. I couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, well, when you compare the acting in that and Clownado, it's like, okay, I can let off a bit on Clownado.
Right.
When it comes to the acting, but like you said, that olden day acting, it was the very campy acting. It was enjoyable.
Right.
Enjoyable.
And it's interesting because I was about to make that comparison with a Broadway show. If you look at the trailer, the set design, you could tell right away this was filmed in one particular location, perhaps two. Certain items in the scene look handcrafted. They don't look real, especially that train ride. Yeah, okay. Good green screen effect right there. Wow. But this type of horror film may not please certain audiences. Only the horror aficionados that are familiar with the classics films of the 50s would really see and find enjoyment in a film like this. A casual viewer would check this trailer out and just tear it apart, give it negative vibe because of the acting, the set design, and so on and so forth. But that's not the case. You have to understand where Joshua Kennedy is going for the type of aesthetic.
We have a problem.
What is it?
We found something and it doesn't look good.
Does this sound like anything I've ever seen?
What was that?
Hey! Oh my God.
A dark secret is unearthed by a local farmer. Local paleontologists reveal it's the remains of a prehistoric monster, Crocodylus. Its tribal seal has been broken, unleashing terror upon the local townspeople. Crocodylus is directed by Miles Erfurth, co-written by Michael McLaren. The cast stars Anthony Corone, Noah Lindbergh, Roberto Escobar, and Courtney DeLugos. I probably butchered that name. And get this, Ken, it's your favorite kind of movies, the one that releases on January 1st. Yay!
Yeah,
In
isn't
theaters.
that something? Yeah, isn't that something? Crocodylus. Wow. I do enjoy creature features that feature crocodile. Well, alligators. There was one film back in, I think, the early 80s. Right, 1980 with Robert Forster. Wow. I'm revealing how old I am. Anyway, it was about an alligator that was flushed down the toilet, and he grows and starts creating havoc in the city. Well, and Crocodylus, yeah, what do you think, Stacey? It looks good. It looks interesting. It has tension. That is what is shown in the trailer. Tension.
Yes, I do enjoy creature features. And just as you said, the trailer is intense. I will give it that. So I can't wait for Crocodylus. I don't know if I'm gonna go see it in the theater or not, but I'm gonna see it at some point.
Yes. Yeah, January is a bad date for any film to be released. We talked about it so many times because that is the date after the holidays. People already done their shopping. and it's cold. It's winter. Nobody wants to venture outside. January is the terrible month to release films. But I doubt it will be in theaters. It'll probably be a limited release, and it will go straight to video on demand.
Yes, probably. I agree.
And check this out. It's interesting. According to IMDb, this film cost $250,000 to make. That's interesting, considering that you have to invest a good amount of budget into practical effects. And if we see and this is great, whoever edited the trailer did a good job of not showing the creature. You think it's a crocodile, but it's not. We have a hint of a human crocodile hybrid. That's interesting. I want to know who that guy's about. What is he about?
Beasts of the field.
Science doesn't want to search for clues.
But one group will find the answers.
PIS. Paranormal Investigation Squad. PIS. That's what people are going to call it.
I think the quality speaks for itself.
The next film that we have a trailer first impressions for is Beasts of the Field. This is a drama horror thriller directed by Chase Dudley, written by Gregory Blair and Brent Slabchuk. The synopsis reads as follows: a delusional cryptozoologist and a psychopathic television presenter lead an amateur expedition into wild forests in hope of finding the legendary Thunderbird, which they believe is the ancestor of a prehistoric pteranodon. Okay, Stacy, what did you gather from this trailer? In my opinion, okay, I just can't get past that the acting involved here, and that's really deterring me from taking this film seriously. Is it a comedy? It looks like a comedy, but according to IMDb, it's a drama horror thriller. There's just a lack of emotion in how the cast deliver their lines.
I agree, and this is another trailer that's intense, like Crocodylus, but it's not much really to go on in the trailer. It's a limited trailer. You don't even get a glimpse of the creature in there. It really just, you hear these dramatic sound effects. You know, you got that intense background noise, and then you got the growl of the quote-unquote beast. So it's one of those things where I guess we'll have to wait and see, because you really don't know what it is. You're just like, what kind of trailer was that?
Yeah, it just felt random.
Yeah.
And
yes.
yeah, and the main characters, I just don't have a connection with them. If you're gonna present the main character first in the trailer, you better give a good job of making us realize why we should be following these people. I did not get that he's a cryptozoologist. From the first few seconds, we know that they're paranormal investigators. We don't know if they're in a TV show or what have you. I don't know. I thought they were working for the government. It doesn't explain anything there.
Yeah, and I mean, now that you mention that, it could be a little government take on it, like about this beast in the field. I mean, what kind of beasts are they? But it's also a good thing that they didn't show, you know, because then that leaves more to the imagination. There's the suspense part. Okay, I want to know what this is. What is that beast, or what are these beasts? What's making that noise?
Right, and that's one thing we always talk about. I prefer when the editor of the trailer doesn't show the creature. And just as you have said, it builds that tension. You want to know what this creature is. What is a Thunderbird? If I did not read the synopsis, I would have thought they're looking for Bigfoot, that growling sound. But according to the synopsis, they're looking for a giant prehistoric bird. Okay.
What? A bird is making it?
Yeah, a bird. Yes. They're looking for a Thunderbird, which is the ancestor of a prehistoric flying dinosaur.
I was going to say the only historic bird I know of is the pterodactyl, and it does not make that sound.
Nah. Well,
wow, that should be something. I think in that case, that's different. I don't think I've seen that yet.
No. Well, setting aside the B-movie acting, I'm curious to see what the story is about. And of course, I want to see the creature design. And hopefully that can salvage the film, because if they invested good money into good creature effects, then that could elevate the production. If the creature would look tacky or CGI, God forbid, they put that shitty CGI shit, then yeah, it's gonna degrade the film, and I'll give it a pass.
Hopefully that bird is as intimidating as its roar. That's what I know. I'm like, it's like plot twist. The bird is actually like small, so you're just like, what the hell? Like, you know.
Imagine that plot twist. The bird is actually somebody's parrot.
Right.
That would be messed up. Oh God, that would be messed up.
Man, that would be like disappointment level 1000.
Well, we could classify Beasts of the Field as a creature feature. With it, it does kind of look found footage in a way, but it's not. I don't know. I'm trying to put my finger on how this trailer is presenting this film to be.
It better not be found footage, because you know what that means. If it's found footage, we are not going to be able to see the creature. Actually, they're going to give you like some random glimpse of it, and that's it. That's what found footage films do. They don't really show the creature. They kind of show like a shadow of the creature.
Right. And then at the last second, you see the creature, a little glimpse of it, and the main characters die or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's a found footage, I am going to be so disappointed.
Well, there's more cons than pros for Beasts of the Field, and you could really examine that from the trailer alone. If I watch it, yeah, I'll check it out. Like I said, I'm curious to see what the story's about and the creature design, especially the creature design. I want to know how they designed this flying prehistoric dinosaur.
House of Forbidden Secrets.
For the Lord did not give us the spirit of timidity, but the spirit of power. The cowardly, the faithless, the detestable.
Jacob Hunt has had some very bad breaks in life. His wife left him, his friends have all abandoned him, and his children barely see him. Jacob has been given an amazing gift and the chance he needs to get back on his feet and start anew. Jacob has landed the job of overnight security at the old Shadowview Manor. It has now been turned into a commercial office and retail building. Jacob is about to learn nights around the old manor contains many secrets, a dark past that is breaking through the boundaries of time, leaking into this dimension. As luck would have it, Jacob's first night on the job is the anniversary of a dark tragedy that has stained the building. House of Forbidden Secrets is directed by Todd Sheets. He also writes the movie. Lew Temple The cast stars Lew Temple, Deanne Thorne, George Hardy, and Lloyd Kaufman. This is one trailer that escalates pretty quickly. House of Forbidden Secrets, a lot went on in that house. Ken, what did you think about this?
Yes. Okay. The film. Well, before I begin my first impressions on this film, I have to say it's a huge coincidence that we have a feature exclusive interview with actor Lew Temple, and we were discussing his latest film, which is titled Come Said the Night, and also he stars in this film, House of Forbidden Secrets. Now, I have to agree with you, Stacy. There's so much going on in this trailer. The synopsis really doesn't help much with the visual here. The visuals, everything that's presented here in this trailer, it's just random. We have, looks like an orgy, and then we have murder, and then we have another orgy scene, and the preacher preaching preachy stuff. It's just it's random.
It was WTF is what it was.
It's weird. It's weird in a curious way. I want to watch the film to know what the hell's going on and what the story is about. Why is everybody in this house that looks haunted? And I don't know, it's just weird.
It's a lot of interlocking themes in there, I can say that. I mean, like you mentioned, you got it got some erotica in there, probably. You got some torture in there. You have probably some sodomy too. What else? Based off that trailer, it's a lot.
Yes.
I mean, you know what it kind of like reminded me of in a way, not like the Onania Club. Six's new film that, well, I don't know when it's coming out, but the Onania Club.
Right.
That human vileness, quote unquote.
Yes. Well, I want to know what's going on in this. It appears to me that the story is about someone who has a psychological problem, let's say, and it's manifesting as a paranormal activity in the house where the character's projecting his inner feelings and is coming across as erotica and violence. That's probably what this trailer is explaining. The first time I seen the trailer, that's what I got out of it. But then I seen the trailer again for the second time, and I said to myself, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah. WTF. This is one of them WTF movies.
Right. And the film is going to release the 13th of November 2018 from Unearthed Films. And you and I, Stacy, both know Unearthed Films, they release more gory, violent content type horror. And this is not the conventional horror that you could see in cinemas. The violence on these films that Unearthed Films release are hardcore, gory, and they trek on paranormal and supernatural. And when I seen they're releasing House of Forbidden Secrets, I'm like, well, it doesn't have hardcore violence, but the story in itself is so weird that, I can see how it falls into that distribution company.
Well, like on the trailer, it kind of like the way it shows is almost maybe like like an olden day film. I want to say maybe 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like the gore and everything, that's probably subliminal. Probably not going to see too much gore in it, if any at all.
Right. And if they do stick to that nostalgic type of violence, the gore would be emulating that era, because you have to, if you're gonna emulate something from the 70s, it has to look 70s. So the practical effects can't look too advanced as it is right now. It has to match that campy, the blood doesn't look so real, and the guts, you could tell it's whatever it is that they use to make guts. But I'm interested, and the Lew Temple, the portrayal, I'm curious. I want to know about this guy. He sounds very disturbed, the way he's reciting his message.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff in that trailer looks a bit disturbing. It's like you're opening Pandora's box.
Right, exactly. I think this film is trying to convey that message, what happens, and maybe Pandora's box is his mind.
Yes.
Oh, we could get philosophical here. We could go deep on this shit.
What happens when, they have movies about Pandora's box. What happens when you open Pandora's box? Yeah, this seems like one of those movies.
Yeah. We're not gonna have a mind blown segment right now. We could, but we won't. But it's arriving on Blu-ray November 13th, and it would have a gallery, deleted scenes, documentary on the House of Forbidden Secrets. But seeing that the trailer has an orgy scene, this particular thing on the DVD, it just made me laugh when I read it has a gag reel. I say to myself, okay, gag. All right, that's a good pun.
Oh man, yeah, this film looks like it's gonna be a good time.
Very good time, right? I'll check it out. In terms of the acting, it seems polished. The comparison to the other trailers that we have reviewed this evening, I think this one has above B-level acting.
Yeah. Hey, we got Lloyd Kaufman too.
Hey, Lloyd Kaufman is everywhere. I'm like,
He is.
What movie is this guy not in?
Right. Mr. Trauma Entertainment.
Right? I tell you that. I think, I don't know. I'll reserve my comment on that. He seems to be in everything. Yeah, he was supposed to be in a film that we covered last year, and for some strange reason it did not release, and I'm unsure why. He was supposed to star in that film.
Was that Open House, Nick Hunt's film?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in Open House. I don't even think he's on the cast anymore though.
Yeah, some strange reason. I'm unsure what's going on with that project.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of updates and everything, so seems like there's probably some struggle, behind the scenes. But I see Nick Hunt, post here and there, and then every now and again he'll post an update about the project. Or no, it's not Open House, it's called Safe House.
Safe House.
Or Safe Place.
That's the one. Safe Place.
Yes, Safe Place. Safe Place. Sorry, Safe Place is what it's called. But yeah, every now and then he'll post a brief update about the about how Safe Place is doing. But I feel like there's a lot of issues. So, because he also posts some kind of like down posts about it too.
Yeah, well, the struggle is real.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to DK Mag Podcast Season 9, Episode 1. My name is Ken Artuz, founder for DK Mag, and your host. Joining me as co-host was
Stacy Cox, staff correspondent. Be sure to stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/DecayMag. Your donations will help us bring future episodes. As a Patreon, you'll receive bonus content as well as free and discounted on upcoming DecayMag merchandise.
And of course, this episode featured an exclusive interview with Nicole Moorea Sherman and Lew Temple. Their upcoming film, Come Set the Night, will be released soon. Phenomenal film right there. And do check out our review of Come Set the Night at DecayMag.com. That is DecayMag.com. You can find us on social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest at DecayMag, not Decay Magazine, not Decay or the word decay. It's DecayMag. So Stacy, to close it out, what really stood out with the movie news? For me, it was that Satanic Church suing Warner Brothers and Netflix. I'm interested to see how this is going to change the landscape for other religion, for horror cinema and filmmakers, not to be more sensitive to what they represent.
Yes, that's definitely a highlight for me. And speaking on that concept alone, attention must be paid for the misrepresentation. Definitely.
And also Nightmare Cinema. I'm looking forward to when Shudder would release this upcoming anthology film, now that they have acquired it at this year's American Film Fest.
I am looking for Nightmare Cinema.
And the trailer, First Impressions, our third segment for the evening. I think the film that really sticks out for me, I would say Crocodylus and House of Forbidden Secrets. I'm just curious about those two.
For me, it's Clownado and House of Forbidden Secrets. I mean, to say curious about House of Forbidden Secrets is an understatement.
Right? Yeah, it's a weird film. Weird in a good way, not in a bad way. It's just mind-boggling. I want to know about this protagonist and the house. And I do enjoy a good creature feature, and I enjoy the way Crocodylus, the trailer, was cut. They just gave a glimpse of that creature, and I'm intrigued. I want to see what he looks like. I want to know the story behind him. Maybe it's a social commentary on pollution. Hey, it could be.
Definitely. Maybe it's the government is involved. You know, the government is involved with a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
Put some kind of DNA in it to,
Yeah,
I love movies like that, though.
Yeah,
they're interesting. You know how the not even just government, but you got the government, you got scientists that always want better. They always want to make things bigger and better, and that's where
Viagra comes in.
They create these DNAs. Like, remember that movie? What is it called? Splice.
Right. Great movie there. Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, they create DNA and everything. Or Stranger Things. You know,
right.
Stranger Things.
Right.
So.
Well, with Stranger Things,
they just always.
With Stranger Things, that's mind control, MK Ultra, which, in my opinion, I think it's still in existence, even though the government said they stopped that program.
Oh yeah, that, and then what about the Demigorgon?
Right.
Yeah, they're always just figuring how to make things bigger and quote unquote better. So.
Absolutely. Well, that concludes.
I love that concept.
Oh yeah, I definitely enjoy a film that projects those type of ideas, because it makes you think, ooh, how true is this? And then when you finish watching the film, you jump on Google and you find actual things that tie into the film that is true. Great episode here, episode 9. Excuse me, Season 9, Episode 1, DecayMag Podcast. And of course, we are on Google Music, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Thank you for tuning in.